I am Matthew, 36 years old, and my own brother introduced me as a failure to the one man I admired most in the world. Before I tell you how I ended up owning the building we were standing in, let me know where you are watching from in the comments. The night air in downtown Chicago was biting, the kind of cold that finds its way through the seams of a cheap coat. I pulled my collar up, checking my reflection in the darkened window of a parked delivery van before crossing the street. I looked tired. I looked like exactly what I was. A high school art teacher who had spent the day grading mediocre watercolor projects and breaking up fights in the cafeteria. Across the street, the entrance to the Zenith Gala was a different world. It was a riot of flashbulbs and velvet ropes. The valet stand was a parade of European engineering. I watched as a sleek, silver Porsche 911 GT3 tore around the corner, the engine growling low and aggressive. It pulled up to the curb with the kind of entitlement that money buys. The door opened, and out stepped Parker. My brother, 5 years younger, 3 inches taller, and wearing a tuxedo that cost more than my car. He didn't just step out, he launched himself into the waiting cameras. He ran a hand through his perfectly styled hair, flashed a smile that had been whitened to an unnatural brightness, and tossed the keys to the valet without even looking at the man. "Keep it close," Parker said, loud enough for the onlookers to hear. "I might need to make a quick exit." My parents, George and Barbara, climbed out of the back seat of a hired town car just behind him. My mother was adjusting her pearls, looking anxious. My father was already scanning the crowd, looking for someone important to shake hands with. They flanked Parker like bodyguards, or perhaps like worshippers at the altar of their golden child. I took a deep breath and crossed the street. I wasn't on the guest list, not really. I was the +1, the afterthought. "Matthew!" My mother spotted me first. Her smile faltered for a fraction of a second before she plastered it back on. She scanned my outfit, a suit I'd bought off the rack 5 years ago. Fit okay, but next to Parker's bespoke Italian wool, I looked like I was wearing a sack. "You made it, and you wore that." "It's a suit, Mom," I said, leaning in to kiss her cheek. She smelled of expensive perfume and hairspray. "It's fine," my father grunted, checking his watch. "Just try to stay in the background, Matt. Tonight is Parker's big night. We don't want any distractions." "Good to see you too, Dad," I said. Parker turned around, his eyes glossing over me. "Hey bro, glad you could make it. Try not to spill anything on the investors, all right? The cleaning bill here is murder." He laughed. My parents laughed. I forced a smile. "Congratulations on the nomination, Parker." "Nomination?" Parker scoffed, adjusting his silk bow tie. "It's practically a coronation, Matt. The Zenith project is the crown jewel of the city. Theodore Ramsey knows talent when he sees it." Theodore Ramsey, the billionaire developer, the man who had reshaped the skyline of 3 continents. He was a legend, and tonight, he was supposedly going to announce Parker's firm as the lead on the new Skyline tower. We moved inside. The ballroom was cavernous, lit by chandeliers that looked like frozen waterfalls. Waiters drifted through the crowd with trays of champagne. I took a glass just to have something to do with my hands. I drifted to the edge of the room, pulling a small, battered sketchbook from my inside pocket. It was a nervous habit. Whenever I felt out of place, which was often around my family, I drew. I started sketching the structural details of the vaulted ceiling, noting the way the load-bearing columns were disguised by decorative molding. "Matthew, put that away," my mother hissed, appearing at my elbow. "You look like a schoolboy doing homework. Mingle, but don't talk business. Leave that to Parker." I slid the book back into my pocket. "Where is he?" "He's over there," she pointed, "with Mr. Ramsey." In the center of the room, a circle had formed. At the heart of it stood Theodore Ramsey. He was 60, with silver hair and eyes that looked like they could cut glass. He wasn't loud. He didn't need to be. The gravity of his money pulled everyone toward him. Parker was right there, laughing too loudly at something Ramsey had said. My father nudged me. "Come on. We have to go say hello." "I don't think—" "Come on," Dad insisted. gripping my elbow with surprising strength. We need a family photo with Ramsey. It's good for the brand. We pushed through the crowd. Parker saw us coming and his smile tightened, but he played the part. He threw an arm around my shoulder, leaning his weight on me. "Mr. Ramsey," Parker said, his voice booming, "I'd like you to meet the rest of the Miles clan. My parents, George and Barbara. And this." He squeezed my shoulder, a little too hard. "This is my older brother, Matthew." Ramsey turned. Up close, he was intimidating. He didn't just look at you. He inspected you. He shook my parents' hands politely. Then he looked at me. "Matthew," Ramsey said, "are you in the industry as well?" The room went quiet. People were listening. This was Parker's moment to shine, to be the gracious winner. Parker smirked. That familiar, condescending twist of his lips that I had known since childhood. "Oh no, sir. Matthew isn't built for the high-pressure world of architecture. He's an art teacher. For elementary kids. Finger painting and macaroni art. Right, Matt?" A ripple of polite, cruel laughter went through the circle. My face heated up. "High school," I corrected softly. "I teach perspective and art history." Right. Parker waved his hand dismissively. "Point is, he's the creative spirit of the family, just on a much smaller scale. I build skyscrapers, he builds confidence in teenagers. We're very proud of him, in a way. He's sort of our family's cautionary tale about ambition." My mother sighed loudly, a sound of practiced martyrdom. "He just lacks the drive, Mr. Ramsey. Always has. But he's happy, and that's what matters." "Such a disappointment," my father muttered under his breath, but in the silence of the circle it was audible. "But we love him." It was a masterclass in humiliation. They had framed my entire existence as a failure in 3 sentences. Ramsey didn't laugh. He didn't even smile. He just stood there, holding his champagne glass, staring at Parker. The silence stretched. It became uncomfortable. The smirk on Parker's face faltered. "Interesting," Ramsey said. His voice was soft, barely a whisper, but it carried. He took a step closer to me. He wasn't looking at my cheap suit anymore. He was looking at my hand. I was holding a cocktail napkin. In my nervousness during Parker's speech, I had pulled out a pen and sketched the column next to us. I hadn't even realized I was doing it. "May I?" Ramsey asked. I froze. "It's nothing. Just a doodle." Ramsey gently took the napkin from my fingers. He held it up to the light. On the flimsy paper, I had drawn a cross-section of the ballroom's cantilever system, but I had added a correction note in the margin about the stress load distribution. Ramsey studied it for a long time. Then he looked at Parker, then back at me. "You have a very distinct line weight," Ramsey said. "The way you render shadow. It's not academic. It's structural." "I dabble," I said, my throat dry. Ramsey smiled. It wasn't a polite social smile. It was the smile of a predator who had just found prey. "Tell me, Matthew, this drawing style. It looks remarkably similar to the preliminary sketches for the Zenith Atrium. The ones Parker submitted for the competition." Parker choked on his drink. "Well, sir, we share genes. Similar handwriting, similar drawing style. It's a genetic thing." Ramsey ignored him. He kept his eyes on me. "Interesting," he repeated. "Because Parker told me he drew those sketches in a fever dream of inspiration while vacationing in Cabo." "Were you in Cabo, Matthew?" "No," I said. "I was in Chicago, grading papers." "I see." Ramsey folded the napkin and placed it neatly in his breast pocket, right next to his silk handkerchief. "Parker, I'd like to see you in my office tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. sharp. We need to discuss the final phase of the contract." Parker beamed, the color returning to his face. "Absolutely, sir. I'll be there, ready to sign. And," Ramsey added, turning back to me, "bring your brother." "Matthew?" Parker laughed nervously. "Why? He'd be bored to tears." "Bring him," Ramsey commanded. The softness was gone. "Or don't bother coming at all." He nodded to my parents, turned on his heel and walked away. The crowd parted for him like the Red Sea. We were left standing there. My mother looked confused. Why does he want Matthew? Parker turned on me, his eyes venomous. What did you do? What was on that napkin? Nothing, I said, though my heart was hammering against my ribs. Just a sketch. You better not embarrass me tomorrow, Parker hissed, stepping close, invading my personal space. You sit there, you keep your mouth shut, and you nod. If you ruin this deal, Matthew, I swear to God, I will make sure you lose that pathetic teaching job. Do you understand? I understand, I said quietly. Good. Parker adjusted his jacket. Go home, get some sleep, and wear a better suit tomorrow. You look like a funeral director. I watched them walk away to mingle with other investors. They looked perfect. The successful son, the proud parents, and me, the failure. But as I walked out into the cold night, waiting for the bus while Parker's Porsche gleamed under the streetlights, I couldn't shake the feeling that the ground had just shifted beneath our feet. Ramsey knew. He had seen the line wait. He had seen the soul in the sketch. And for the first time in years, I wasn't just afraid. I was ready. The bus ride home was a 40-minute crawl through the city I had helped build but could not claim. I pressed my forehead against the cold glass, watching the skyline drift by. Every few blocks, I saw a building that carried a piece of me. The curved glass facade on 4th Street. I solved the thermal bridging issue on that when Parker was too hungover to open his laptop. The retrofitted loft conversion in the West Loop. My concept, scribbled on a pizza box at 3 a.m. while Parker was networking in Ibiza. I got off at my stop and walked 2 blocks to my apartment. It was a studio, cramped and smelling faintly of turpentine and old coffee. My parents called it sad. I called it affordable. I tossed my keys on the small table and collapsed onto the sofa. My phone buzzed. A text from Mom. Don't be late tomorrow. And please shave. You looked scruffy tonight. I didn't reply. Couldn't. I closed my eyes and let the memories wash over me. It hadn't always been this way. There was a time when I was the one with the potential. 12 years ago, I was 24, fresh out of my master's program, graduating top of my class. I had a portfolio that professors were calling visionary. Parker was 19, flunking out of his first year of business school, partying his way through his tuition. I remembered the family meeting at the kitchen table. My father, George, sat at the head, looking grim. My mother was crying into a tissue. We have a problem, Dad had said. Parker, he's in trouble. Academic probation. And some debts. Debts? I asked. Gambling, Mom sobbed. He's just a boy, Matthew. He made mistakes. But if this gets out, our reputation, your grandfather's legacy. We need a pivot, Dad said, looking at me. Parker needs a win. He needs a career that looks impressive. Architecture. He can't draw a straight line, I said. And he has no degree. We can buy the degree, Dad said dismissively, or get him into a private program that's flexible. But he needs the talent. He needs the work. They looked at me. The silence in the kitchen was heavy. You want me to tutor him? I asked. We want you to help him, Mom said, reaching across the table to squeeze my hand. Just for a while, until he gets on his feet. You're the big brother, Matthew. You're the strong one. You can handle the background. Parker, he needs the spotlight to survive. He's fragile. Fragile. That was the word they used to weaponize my love for him. Because Parker was charming and handsome, but hollow. And I was quiet and awkward, but full. So they decided to pour me into him. It started with a few assignments. Then his final thesis. Then, when he launched his firm with Dad's money, it was his first commission. I drew it. He signed it. He won an award. My parents threw him a party. I sat in the corner, and Dad whispered, "Thank you for saving the family, Matt. Saving the family." I opened my eyes, staring at the cracked plaster of my ceiling. That was the trap. Every time I thought about stopping, about claiming my own life, they pulled the family card. We're a team, Matt. Don't be selfish, Matt. Do you want your brother to end up in jail, Matt? I stood up and walked to the corner of the room where my drafting table sat. It was the only expensive thing I owned, covered in a tarp. I pulled the tarp back. Underneath was the Zenith Project. Not the glossy renderings Parker showed clients. The real ones. The charcoal sketches where I had agonized over the light hitting the atrium. The structural calculations for the spire. I had spent 6 months on this design. Parker had spent those 6 months vacationing in the Maldives and buying watches. I ran my hand over the paper. This was my soul. And tomorrow, Ramsey was going to sign a contract that would legally bind my soul to Parker's name forever. My phone rang. It was Parker. What? I answered, voice rough. Are you awake? He sounded panicked. The arrogance from the Gala was gone. I'm looking at the contract draft. There's a clause here about IP indemnity. And Ramsey asked for the original concept sketches tomorrow. So, I don't have them, Matthew. You have them. You never gave me the physical sketchbooks, just the digital scans. I kept them, I said. They're mine. Don't start this, Parker snapped. Bring them tomorrow. Ramsey wants to see the process. If I show up empty-handed, he walks. If he walks, the firm goes under. If the firm goes under, the loan Dad took out against the house gets called in. Do you want Mom and Dad on the street? There it was. The leverage. I'll bring them, I said, feeling the familiar weight of defeat settling in my chest. Good. And Matt? Yeah. Don't say anything stupid. Just hand over the books and let me do the talking. You're just the assistant, the archivist. Got it. I got it. I hung up. I looked at the sketchbook. I knew what I had to do. I had to go there, hand over my life's work, and watch my brother take the credit again. It was the script I had followed for a decade. But then I remembered Ramsey's eyes. Interesting. He hadn't looked at me with pity. He had looked at me with curiosity. I sat down at the drafting table. I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I opened a fresh page. And I began to draw. Not for Parker. Not for the Zenith. I drew something else. A complex, impossible structure that defied gravity. I drew until my hand cramped and the sun began to bleed through the blinds. If I was going to be the failure, I was going to be the most talented failure in that room. The next morning, I put on my funeral director suit. I shaved. I packed the sketchbooks into a worn leather satchel. A gift from my grandfather, the only person who had ever really encouraged me. I took a cab to the Ramsey Tower. It was a glass monolith piercing the Chicago sky. Parker was waiting in the lobby. He looked wired. His eyes were bloodshot, probably from staying up all night worrying, or partying, or both. He was pacing back and forth, checking his reflection in the glass walls. You're 5 minutes late, he hissed as I walked through the revolving doors. Traffic, I said. He grabbed my arm, pulling me toward the elevators. Do you have the books? I patted the satchel. Right here. Let me see. Not here, I said, pulling away. There are cameras. You want everyone to see you panicking over your assistant's bag. He stopped, straightening his tie. Right? Good point. Keep it together. We go up, we smile, we show him the sketches, we sign. Then you can go back to whatever it is you do. Teaching, I said. Yeah, that. The elevator ride was a silent ascent to judgment. My ears popped as we passed the 40th floor. Parker was vibrating with nervous energy. He kept checking his watch, his cuffs, his hair. He likes me, Parker muttered to himself. Ramsey likes bold vision. I'm bold. I'm the face. You're just the hands. I'm the face. He was reciting it like a mantra. The doors opened on the penthouse floor. The reception area was larger than my entire apartment building. Minimalist, cold, expensive. A receptionist with a headset looked up. Mr. Miles and... She paused, looking at me. Mr. Miles's associate, Parker said quickly. Mr. Ramsey is waiting for you in the boardroom. We walked down a long corridor lined with architectural models of famous buildings. I saw the Empire State, the Burj Khalifa, and at the end, a pedestal that was empty. waiting for the next icon. Parker pushed open the heavy double doors. The boardroom was all glass, overlooking the lake. Theodore Ramsey stood by the window, his back to us. He was looking out at the city he ruled. "Mr. Ramsey," Parker said, putting on his best salesman voice. "Good morning. What a view." Ramsey turned slowly. He didn't smile. "Sit down," he said. We sat. The table was a slab of black marble. There were no papers on it, just a single pencil. "I've been reviewing the Zenith proposal," Ramsey said, walking to the head of the table. "It's brilliant. The atrium design is revolutionary. The way it handles natural light, it's almost spiritual." Parker puffed out his chest. "Thank you, sir. Inspiration struck me one morning watching the sunrise over the Pacific. I just grabbed a napkin and—" "Stop," Ramsey said, softly, but it was like a whip crack. Parker froze. "I checked the flight logs, Parker," Ramsey said, his voice devoid of emotion. "You weren't in Cabo when these preliminary drawings were dated. You were in Vegas. And the timestamps on the digital files? They were uploaded from an IP address in the suburbs. A small apartment complex." Parker's mouth opened and closed like a fish. "Sir, I have a remote server. My workflow is complex." "Is it?" Ramsey looked at me. "Matthew, open your bag." Parker shot me a look of terror. "Don't do it," his eyes screamed. I hesitated. This was the moment. The cliff. "Open it," Ramsey repeated. I unbuckled the leather straps. I pulled out the 3 black sketchbooks. They were worn, dog-eared. They smelled of graphite and effort. I slid them across the marble table. Ramsey placed his hand on them. He didn't open them yet. "Parker," Ramsey said, "I have a simple test for you. A design charrette. Right here. Right now." "A what?" Parker stammered. "A test," Ramsey said. He picked up the pencil from the table and slid a blank sheet of paper toward Parker. "Draw me the connection detail for the main spire. Just a quick sketch. Show me how the load transfers to the foundation. If you designed it, you know it by heart. It's the spine of the building." The room went dead silent. The hum of the air conditioning sounded like a jet engine. Parker stared at the paper. He picked up the pencil. His hand was shaking so badly the tip tapped against the table. Tap, tap, tap. He looked at me. Desperation. Panic. I'm more of a concept guy, sir." Parker laughed nervously. "I have people for the technical details. My vision is big picture." "The visionary knows the bones of his creation," Ramsey said coldly. "Draw." Parker put the pencil to the paper. He drew a line, then a circle. It looked like a lollipop. It was pathetic. It was the drawing of a man who hadn't touched a drafting table in 10 years. Ramsey watched him for a full minute. Then he reached out and gently took the pencil from Parker's hand. "That's what I thought," Ramsey whispered. He turned to me. He slid the paper and pencil in front of me. "Matthew," he said, "show him." The pencil felt warm in my hand. It was a Stettler Mars Lumograph, for B. High quality. The wood was smooth. I looked at Parker. He was pale, sweating through his expensive foundation. He looked small. For the first time in my life, I didn't see the golden child. I saw a scared kid who had built a castle on sand. "Matt," Parker whispered, his voice trembling. "Don't." I looked at Ramsey. His expression was unreadable, but his eyes were patient. Waiting, I took a breath, and I started to draw. It wasn't a conscious decision. It was muscle memory. It was 10 years of nights spent hunched over a table while Parker slept. It was the anger, the frustration, the silence, all flowing out through the graphite. I drew the spire connection. I didn't just draw the shape, I drew the forces. I used heavy, dark strokes for the compression members, light, airy lines for the tension cables. I cross-hatched the shadows. I added notes in my distinct, blocky handwriting, the same handwriting Ramsey had seen on the napkin. Load transfer via radial truss. Secondary dampening system required for wind shear. The sound of the pencil scratching against the paper was the only sound in the room. Scritch-scratch. Scritch-scratch. It was the sound of truth. I worked for 10 minutes. When I finished, I put the pencil down. Ramsey picked up the drawing. He held it side by side with one of the sketchbooks he had opened. The match was undeniable. The style, the confidence, the soul. It was identical. "It's beautiful," Ramsey said quietly. He looked at Parker. "Get out." Parker stood up, his chair scraping loudly against the floor. "Sir, please, let me explain. It's a collaboration. I provide the direction, Matthew just executes. He's a technician. He can't run a firm. He's a schoolteacher. He's the architect," Ramsey said, his voice turning hard. "You are a fraud. You can't do this," Parker shouted, losing his composure. "My parents. We have a verbal agreement. The press release is drafted." "I don't care about your press release," Ramsey said. He pressed a button on the intercom. "Security. Escort Mr. Parker Miles out of the building. And ban him from all Ramsey properties." "Matthew!" Parker screamed at me. "Say something. Tell him. Tell him we're partners." I looked at my brother. I saw the manipulation, the years of theft. "We aren't partners, Parker," I said, my voice steady. "I was your ghost. And I'm done being dead." 2 large security guards entered the room. They didn't touch Parker. They just stood close enough to make him realize resistance was futile. Parker looked at me with pure hatred. "You're dead to us," he spat. "Mom and Dad will never forgive you." Then he turned and stormed out, trying to salvage some shred of dignity but failing miserably as he tripped slightly on the carpet. The doors closed. Silence returned to the room. Ramsey sat down opposite me. He opened a silver case and offered me a cigarette. I shook my head. "Good habit," he said. He didn't light one either. I knew the moment I saw the napkin, but I needed to see him fail. I needed to see if he had any honor to admit it. He didn't. "He never has," I said. "So," Ramsey leaned back, steepling his fingers. "Here is the situation. I have a billion-dollar project that breaks ground in 3 months. The lead architect on record just got fired for fraud. I need a replacement. I can recommend some firms," I said. "Skidmore, Owings, and Merrill. Gensler." Ramsey laughed. A dry, rasping sound. "I don't want a firm, Matthew. I want the mind that designed this atrium. I want you." "I'm not licensed," I said. "Well, I have my degree, but I never sat for the exams because, well, Parker needed the time. I have lawyers who can fast-track the licensing board." Ramsey waved his hand. "Technicality. I'm offering you the position of lead architect for the Zenith project. And principal at my in-house design studio." My heart stopped. This was the dream. The impossible dream. "And," Ramsey continued, sliding a folder across the table, "I'm buying out Parker's firm. Or rather, I'm buying the intellectual property, which is yours. The check in this folder is a signing bonus. It covers the back pay for every drawing you ever did for him." I opened the folder. The check was blue. The number on it had 6 zeros. It was $250,000. "Why?" I asked. "Why go to this trouble?" Ramsey looked out the window. 15 years ago, I was nearly bankrupt. A young consultant saved my company. She worked in the shadows, let her boss take the credit. I didn't speak up then. I watched her get crushed. I promised myself if I ever saw that pattern again, I would break it. He looked back at me. "Talent is rare, Matthew. Courage is rarer. Today you showed me both." I touched the check. Felt real. "One condition," I said. "Name it." "My name goes on the building. Big letters. On the cornerstone." "Done," Ramsey said. "And the Porsche?" "What?" "The car Parker drove here. It's leased under the firm's name, which I now effectively control pending the lawsuit I'm about to file for fraud. Would you like the keys?" I thought about Parker throwing those keys to the valet. I thought about the bus. "No," I said. "Send it back. I'll buy my own car." Ramsey smiled. A genuine smile this time. "Good answer. Now let's get to work. That Spire connection needs to be refined." The work was exhilarating. For the first time in my life, I wasn't drawing in a dark corner. I was in a studio with floor-to-ceiling windows, surrounded by a team of junior architects who called me sir, and actually listened to my ideas. Ramsey was a demanding boss, but he was fair. He pushed me to be better, not to be faster. But outside the office, the storm was gathering. My phone had been blowing up for 6 hours. 40 missed calls from Mom, 20 from Dad. A string of texts from Parker that ranged from begging to threatening. Matthew, answer the phone. You ruined everything. How could you do this to your family? I knew I had to face them. I couldn't hide in Ramsey's tower forever. At 7 p.m., I left the office. I didn't take the bus. I hailed a cab. Highland Park, I told the driver. My parents' house. The house was a sprawling colonial in an upscale suburb. It was the house Parker's success was supposed to pay for. As the cab pulled up, I saw Parker's Porsche in the driveway, parked crookedly. I walked to the front door. I didn't knock. I used my key. The moment I stepped into the foyer, the shouting stopped. They were in the living room. Mom was on the sofa, clutching a handkerchief. Dad was pacing, a glass of scotch in his hand. Parker was sitting on the ottoman, head in his hands. They all looked up. You, Dad growled. The venom in his voice hit me like a physical blow. You have the nerve to walk in here? I live here, I said calmly. Well, not here, but in the family. Not anymore. Parker stood up. His eyes were wild. You stole my job. You stole my client. You told Ramsey I was a fraud. I told him the truth, I said, walking into the room. I didn't sit down. I stood in the center, near the fireplace. You are a fraud, Parker. You haven't drawn a plan in 10 years. We had an arrangement. Mom cried out. We had a plan. You were supposed to support him. That's what family does. Support him? I laughed. A bitter, hollow sound. Mom, I carried him. I built his entire career on my back. And what did I get? The failure. The disappointment. You humiliated me in front of the whole city last night. It was a strategy, Dad yelled. We had to lower expectations for you so Parker looked better. It's marketing, Matthew. You're too stupid to understand business. I understand business fine, I said. I just signed a contract worth more than Parker has made in his entire life. That money belongs to the family. Parker stepped forward. That's my project. My IP. You signed it over to me 5 years ago. Under duress, I said. And Ramsey's lawyers disagree. They say since I was never an employee and never paid, the copyright remains with the creator. That's me. Parker lunged at me. It was a clumsy, desperate swing. I sidestepped easily, and he stumbled into the coffee table, knocking over a vase. Stop it! Mom screamed. Stop it right now! Parker scrambled up, his face red. You think you've won? You think Ramsey keeps you? He'll chew you up. You have no presence, Matthew. You're a ghost. You'll always be a ghost. Maybe, I said, but I'm a rich ghost. And I'm a ghost with a lawyer. A lawyer? Dad narrowed his eyes. You're suing us? No, I said. But Ramsey is suing Parker. For fraud, breach of contract, and embezzlement of project funds. He audited the advance payments, Parker. Where did the $100,000 for the material research go? Parker went pale. He looked at Dad. Dad looked away. Vegas, I guessed. Or was it the car payments? It was for networking, Parker shouted. I had to maintain the image. You don't get clients driving a Honda. You don't get clients by stealing from them either, I said. The doorbell rang. We all froze. Who would come over in the middle of this? I'll get it, Mom said, wiping her eyes. She walked to the door. A moment later, a voice drifted in. A voice I hadn't heard in 2 years. Hello, Barbara. I hear there's a crisis. I thought I'd bring wine. It was Aunt Irene, my mother's older sister, the black sheep of her generation. She walked into the living room, wearing a trench coat and carrying a bottle of Pinot Noir. She looked at the shattered vase, Parker's red face, and my defiant stance. Well, Irene said, setting the bottle down. Looks like the chickens have finally come home to roost. Get out, Irene, Dad snapped. This is a private family matter. Oh, shut up, George, Irene said breezily. She walked over to me and kissed me on the cheek. Hello, Matthew. You look lighter. Hi, Aunt Irene. Why are you here? Mom demanded. Because Savannah called me, Irene said. Parker's head snapped up. Savannah? My fiancé? Ex-fiancé, I believe, Irene corrected. She called me an hour ago. She's packing her bags. She wanted me to tell you that she left the ring on the kitchen counter at your condo. She also wanted me to give Matthew something. Irene reached into her bag and pulled out a thick manila envelope. She handed it to me. What is this? I asked. Open it, Irene said. It's the reason I drove 2 hours in the snow. I opened the envelope. Inside were bank statements, old ones, from 12 years ago, and a copy of a will. My grandfather's will. I scanned the documents. My breath caught in my throat. Grandpa left me money, I whispered. $50,000. For an art studio. He did, Irene said, staring hard at my mother. He set up a trust, specifically for Matthew. He knew Parker was the favorite, and he wanted to make sure Matthew had a start. I looked at the bank transfer records. The date was 2 weeks after Grandpa died. The entire amount, $50,000, was transferred out. Where did it go? I asked, though I was starting to guess. I flipped the page. A transfer to Porsche of North America, and another to University of Southern California tuition. I looked up at my parents. My hands were shaking. You stole my inheritance, I said. My voice was barely a whisper, but it sounded like a thunderclap in the quiet room. You took the money Grandpa left for my studio? And you bought Parker a car? Mom started to cry harder. We had to. Parker didn't get the scholarship. He needed a car to rush the fraternity. It was an investment in his future. We thought you'd be fine. You're so self-sufficient, Matthew. You didn't need the help. Parker needed the help. I didn't need the help? I felt tears prick my eyes. Not of sadness, but of rage. I was eating ramen noodles and living in a basement. I was working 3 jobs while doing Parker's homework. And you stole my money to buy him a toy. It wasn't stealing, Dad shouted, banging his fist on the mantelpiece. We are the trustees. We decided the allocation of resources. It was a family decision. I wasn't part of the family decision. I yelled back. Because you don't matter, Parker screamed. The room froze. Parker stood there, panting. He realized what he had said, but he didn't take it back. You don't matter, Parker repeated, quieter this time, but with more malice. You're the worker bee, Matt. You're the support staff. I am the star. That money was wasted on you. You would have just bought paints. I used it to build a network, to build a brand. A brand that just got fired, Irene said coldly. A brand that is about to be indicted. I looked at them, my mother weeping for her golden boy, my father justifying his theft, my brother believing his own lies. I realized then that there was no fixing this. There was no apology coming. They didn't love me. They used me, and they resented me for stopping the usage. I reached into my pocket. I pulled out the check Ramsey had given me, the signing bonus. I looked at it one last time. Then I walked over to the coffee table and placed it down. What is that? Dad asked, squinting. That, I said, is $250,000. Dad's eyes went wide. He reached for it. I slapped his hand away, hard. Don't touch it, I said. I just wanted you to see it. This is what my talent is worth. This is what I am worth. I picked the check back up and folded it into my pocket. I'm leaving, I said. Don't call me. Don't come to my office. If you try to contact me, my lawyer will file charges for the theft of the trust fund. The statute of limitations hasn't run out on fraud by a trustee. Matthew, please, Mom wailed. He's your brother. I don't have a brother, I said. I have a parasite, and I just took the cure. I turned to Aunt Irene. Do you need a ride home? I drove. She smiled. But I'll follow you. Let's get dinner. I'm buying. I walked out of the house. The cold air hit my face. Felt clean. Behind me, I heard the sounds of arguing starting up again. Parker blaming Mom. Dad blaming Parker. They were eating each other alive. I got into the cab. Drive, I said. As we pulled away, I watched the house disappear in the rearview mirror. It didn't look like home anymore. It just looked like a building. And I knew how to fix broken buildings. Sometimes you have to demo them down to the foundation and start over. The next few months were a blur of concrete, steel, and litigation. Ramsey wasn't joking about the lawsuit. He went after Parker with the efficiency of a demolition crew. The forensic accountants tore through Parker's firm. They found everything. The fake invoices. The personal vacations expensed as site visits. The payments to S.A. Mills for his college papers. It was all exposed. The Chicago Tribune ran a story, The Hollow Skyscraper, how a promising architect built a career on lies. They didn't mention my name much, which was fine by me. I was mentioned only as the uncredited source. Parker's license, which he had obtained through a loophole and some forged hours, was revoked. He filed for bankruptcy. The Porsche was repossessed. I didn't relish his fall. Honestly, I didn't feel much about it at all. I was too busy. The Zenith project was rising. I was on site every day at 6 a.m. I wore a hard hat and boots, not a suit. I walked the rebar grid with the foreman. I checked the welds. I argued with the structural engineers about the wind loads on the spire. The math works, I told the lead engineer one dusty afternoon. The truss is redundant. It will hold. It's aggressive, Matt, the engineer said. Ramsey usually plays it safer. Ramsey hired me to be bold, I said. Trust the line. And they did. They trusted me. One afternoon, I was in the site trailer reviewing the glass specs when the door opened. It was Savannah. She looked different. Less makeup. Wearing jeans and a sweater instead of the cocktail dresses I usually saw her in. She looked tired. Hi, Matthew, she said. Savannah. I stood up. I can't talk about the lawsuit. My lawyer said. I'm not here for Parker, she said. She stayed by the door. I just wanted to say, I'm sorry. You don't have to apologize. I do, she said. I knew, Matt. I didn't know everything. But I knew he wasn't doing the drawings. I saw him panic every time a deadline came up. I saw him calling you at midnight. I let myself believe the lie because, well, the life was good. The parties were fun. I was shallow. You sent the portfolio to Ramsey, I said. She looked surprised. How did you know? Irene told me you called her. But I guessed the rest. Ramsey told me he received an anonymous package with my old college sketches a week before the gala. That's why he targeted Parker. Savannah nodded. I found them in the closet. Parker was going to burn them. He said he needed to destroy the evidence. Couldn't let him. They were beautiful. She reached into her purse and pulled out a key. This is the key to the condo, she said. It's in Parker's name, but the bank is foreclosing. I moved out. I wanted you to know that not everyone was blind. Some of us just chose not to see. And I regret that. Where is he? I asked. Living in your parents' basement, she said grimly. They're miserable. He blames them. They blame him. It's a toxic loop. You got out just in time. Thank you, Savannah, I said, for saving the sketches. Good luck with the tower, Matthew. It's going to be amazing. She left. I watched her walk through the construction site, dodging a cement mixer. I felt a sense of closure I didn't know I needed. That evening, Ramsey called me up to his office. Status report, he said. We're on schedule, I said. Glass installation starts next week. Good. Ramsey spun his chair around. I have a new project. In Tokyo. Mixed use, high density. I want you to lead it. Tokyo? I blinked. That's big. You're big now, Matthew, Ramsey said. He tossed a magazine onto the table. It was Architectural Digest. On the cover was a rendering of the zenith. And underneath, in bold letters, "The ghost steps into the light. Matthew Miles redefines the Chicago skyline." "They want an interview," Ramsey said. "And a photo shoot." "I hate photo shoots," I said. "Get used to it," Ramsey smiled. "Oh, and one more thing. I took the liberty of ordering a company car for you, since you refused the Porsche." "I have a perfectly good Jeep," I said. "It's in the garage," Ramsey said. "Slot 1. Take a look on your way out." I went down to the garage. In slot 1, sitting under the fluorescent lights, was a car. It wasn't a sports car. It wasn't a flashy look-at-me toy. It was a Rolls-Royce Ghost. Black on black. Powerful. Silent. Commanding. I ran my hand over the hood. It was a machine built for someone who had arrived, not someone who was rushing to get somewhere. I got in. The leather smelled like success. I started the engine. It was a whisper. I drove out of the garage and onto Wacker Drive. The city lights reflected on the hood. I drove past the bus stop where I had stood in the cold months ago. I saw a man waiting there, looking tired. I didn't feel superior. I felt grateful. I drove to the lakefront. I parked and looked out at the dark water. My phone buzzed. It was a blocked number. I knew who it was. I debated ignoring it. But then I answered. "Hello, Matt." It was Mom. Her voice was cracked, weak. "What do you want, Mom?" We need money, Matt," she cried. "The lawyers, the legal fees, they're taking the house. Parker he's in a bad place. We need help. Just a loan. Please. You're rich now. You have that big check." "I invested it," I said calmly. "In my future." "How can you be so cruel?" she sobbed. "We are your family." "No," I said. "You're the people who stole my grandfather's gift. You're the people who made me a shadow. I'm not cruel, Mom. I'm just structural. And you're a structural flaw." "Don't hang up," she screamed. "If you hang up, don't ever come back." "That's the plan," I said. I hung up, and then I blocked the number. I sat there in the silence of the Rolls-Royce. I waited for the guilt to come, the crushing weight of obligation that had ruled my life for 36 years. But it didn't come. Instead, I looked up at the skeletal frame of the Zenith Tower rising in the distance. It was half-finished, ragged, and raw, but it was standing on its own. It was holding its own weight, and so was I. 1 year later, the ribbon-cutting ceremony for the Zenith Tower was the social event of the season. The same people who had been at the gala the year before were here. The same expensive suits. The same fake smiles. But the dynamic had changed. Parker wasn't here. He was working at a car dealership in Wisconsin, or so I heard from Aunt Irene. Dad had had a minor stroke from the stress of the bankruptcy and was in assisted living. Mom was living in a small condo, bitter and alone. I stood on the podium next to Theodore Ramsey. The wind whipped at our ties. We were 60 stories up on the observation deck. Below us, Chicago spread out like a circuit board. "Ladies and gentlemen," Ramsey spoke into the microphone, "architecture is not just about steel and glass. It is about truth. A building cannot lie. If the foundation is weak, it falls. If the design is soulless, it is forgotten." He turned to me. "For years, the genius behind this design was hidden. But truth has a way of rising to the top. I give you the lead architect of the Zenith and my new partner, Matthew Miles." The applause was thunderous. I stepped to the mic. I looked at the crowd. I saw Aunt Irene in the front row wiping a tear. I saw my old students from the high school, who I had invited as VIPs. "Thank you," I said. My voice was steady. I used to think that being invisible was safe. I thought that if I stayed in the shadows, I couldn't get hurt. But I learned that the shadows are where the rot happens. I touched the steel railing. "This building is transparent," I said. "It has nothing to hide, and neither do I. To anyone out there who feels like they are carrying the weight for someone else, put it down. Build your own tower." I cut the ribbon. The champagne flowed. People rushed to shake my hand. Investors who had ignored me a year ago now wanted to know my opinion on the market. Women who wouldn't have looked at the art teacher gave me their cards. I was polite, but I kept my distance. I knew the difference now between people who valued me and people who valued my position. Later that night, the party wound down. I was the last one on the roof. Ramsey came out holding 2 glasses of scotch. Rare, vintage stuff. "You did good, kid," he said. "Thanks, Theodore." "So," he leaned against the railing. "Tokyo starts next month. You ready?" "I'm ready," I said. "But I have a request." "Another one?" Ramsey chuckled. "You're getting expensive." "I want to start a scholarship," I said. "The Miles Grant. For underprivileged art and architecture students. Students who have the talent but not the money. I want to fund it with my bonus from this project." Ramsey clinked his glass against mine. "Done. I'll match it." We stood there, looking at the city. I thought about the napkin, the flimsy piece of paper that had started it all. I reached into my pocket. I still had it, framed now in a small acrylic block. I looked at the drawing. It was just a sketch, but it was the moment I decided to stop being a ghost. I looked at the reflection in the glass of the tower. I saw a man in a bespoke suit, standing tall, with a fire in his eyes that hadn't been there before. I wasn't Matthew the failure. I wasn't Matthew the teacher. I wasn't Parker's brother. I was Matthew Miles, architect, and I was just getting started. This is the moment that changed everything, when I finally took back control of my life. Thank you for patiently sticking with me until the end. You are amazing. Please help me by liking this video and commenting number 1 below, so I know you've journeyed with me this far. This not only helps more people find this story, but also lets me know that my experiences mean something to someone. Your support is the biggest motivation for me to continue sharing the rest of this journey.